Good evening, everyone. We would like to welcome you back to our Team Tuesdays webinar series. My name is Kristen Lenig, and I am the Central Field Director for Special Olympics Pennsylvania. I will be your host today during this webinar, and my teammate Haley Fuzak, who is the SOPA Marketing and PR Manager, will be operating the presentation. I would also like to introduce our athlete co-MC, Chloe Phillips from Lancaster County. Chloe has been a SOPA athlete since 2009 and participates in basketball, swimming, and powerlifting. Chloe is currently training for an Ironman triathlon, which she'll be running 3 miles, biking 23 miles, and swimming 200 meters. She is using the training that she does for the Ironman towards her SOPA Move Challenge. Chloe is the athlete representative for Lancaster County, a trained global messenger, and the health and fitness coordinator. Her favorite Special Olympics memory is graduating from Athlete Leadership University and meeting Loretta Claiborne at sports camp.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to serve as the co-MC for tonight's Women in Sports webinar. I would like to remind everyone that throughout this webinar, your microphones will be muted and your video cameras will be disabled.
At the end of our presentation, we will have a brief time for questions. These questions should be submitted through the Q&A box for the panelists to answer. This webinar will be recorded and posted to our SOPA YouTube channel, where you can view later and share with others.
As you all know, the purpose of this webinar series is to connect with all of you and share helpful and motivational content to continue our mission. Thank you to everyone joining us tonight. Let's kick off this webinar by hearing from Matt Aaron, the President and CEO of Special Olympics Pennsylvania.
Thanks so much, Chloe and Kristen. It's great to be with everybody tonight. We have an amazing panel, so I'm going to be very brief in my introduction, but I did want to share a couple things. And the first one is it's exciting to be underway with our spring season. The first official day was yesterday. We have a couple of sites that are up and going with in-person activities already, and more have expressed interest and will be coming back online soon. And so we have a full complement of activities available to athletes this spring, from the fitness heptathlon to the Move Challenge to virtual training and competing, but also now we're adding back in person. So that's exciting. And I look forward to working with all of you in our local programs around the state in getting as many of our athletes back into in-person activities just as quickly as we can. And that brings me to the brief announcement that I wanted to make. On Friday, many of you saw an email from me asking for your help in advocating with our state officials. A lot of people didn't realize that right now, all people with intellectual disabilities do not have equal access to the COVID vaccine. So some athletes are in group or phase 1A, some are in 1B, but there are also some who are in phase 2, which really means that they don't have any priority for vaccines. And you can help us address that with our state leaders and advocate for them to change that and prioritize all of our athletes for vaccines. You can either go back to my email and follow the links in there, or just go to the Special Olympics PA website, which is specialolympicspa.org. We can put that in the chat window for everyone. Just go there, and right on our homepage, you'll find a link to it. And it's very easy to help. You can click a link to send a message to Governor Wolf, and there are instructions there on how you can send an email to the members of the state task force. There are several, 2 senators and 2 state representatives who make up that task force. And my understanding is they are meeting this week to discuss whether they are going to change the prioritization for people with disabilities. So now is the perfect time to lend your voice. So please help us with that and help change what right now is a disparity. And many of our fellow states, at least 15 of them, have already made that change, and Pennsylvania is behind. So please join us in making that advocacy push. And now I want to get back to tonight's panel. As everyone I'm sure knows, March is Women's History Month. And I also know that everybody on this call knows that the founder of Special Olympics was Eunice Kennedy Shriver, an amazing woman. And so for the 50+ years of this movement, women have always been prominent leaders of Special Olympics. And so tonight we have an amazing panel with us to talk about their experience as women leaders in sports. So I'm excited to hear what they're going to share with us tonight. I hope all of you are going to take something from this and enjoy it as well. And now I'm going to turn it back to Chloe and Kristen to introduce our wonderful panel for tonight.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much for those important updates and remarks. And I believe Haley did share the link that Matt was talking about in the chat box. If you want to click on that link and share with others the importance and the necessity of getting vaccines for our athletes, so everyone can do their part and help our state. Now, like Matt said, we are very excited to celebrate Women's History Month with an amazing panel of women who have made a tremendous impact in the sports world and breaking down barriers for other women.
It is now my pleasure to welcome our guest speakers for tonight's meeting. Brandy Hathaway, Director of Academic and Membership Affairs at NCAA. Janie Brown, a former U.S. Olympic swimmer. And Violet Palmer, who was one of the first female refs in the NBA and who continues to have an impact on games of basketball.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Before we jump in, though, into our panel, we would like to briefly have you briefly introduce yourselves and share some of your background with us on how you got involved in sports or the sports industry. So let's start with Violet first.
Well, first, I want to say thanks so much for having me. It's truly an honor to be here, and I'm just happy to share my story. I hope anything that I can say can help all the participants that's actually participating on the call today, or this evening, I should say. But just a little bit about me. I am the first referee in the NBA. I was hired in 1997. I think the great thing for me was that I was an NCAA collegiate referee for about 9 years before getting into the NBA. I played basketball at Cal Poly Pomona on a basketball scholarship. So it seems like basketball for me is my world. And it really kind of changed once I got my feet wet and picked up a whistle and put the striped shirt on and started officiating. I just found my passion and the love, and I was really, really blessed in '97 to receive that call from the NBA, and had a great career for 20 years. I retired in 2015. I am still actively right now. I am a collegiate coordinator. I have 3 collegiate conferences: the Pac-12, the Western Athletic Conference, and the West Coast Conference. I am in charge of about 200 Division I referees, and I have about 46 and counting Division I schools that I'm responsible for. So as you can see, my world is full of officiating in basketball. And I am so happy to be on this call, and I look forward to all the questions and discussions.
Great, thank you, Violet. We're gonna pass it over to Janie. Janie, can you introduce yourself and tell us your sports background?
Sure, Violet, I'm so honored to meet you. Before I say anything about myself, and what an honor, and I don't know how you do it. I'm really impressed, and I'm gonna look for you out there if you're back out doing the refereeing.
Okay.
Yeah, I swam from an early age, I guess 6 or 7, and had the best time in my life competing. My father taught me to swim. I went to the Olympic trials when I was 12 and knew that that was what I wanted for a goal. Chloe, I just wanted to go. I didn't need to win a gold medal or a silver or bronze. I knew that that's what my goal would be at 12. And I swam in the Olympic trials again in 68. And we can talk about that more later, but I did make it on one relay team and I got to swim with 2 other Americans. And we got first, second, and third in an individual event. I still can't believe that either. And then I retired from swimming, tried to do some other sports. It wasn't the same as swimming. You know, lacrosse, no, I could just run fast. So I didn't do that for long. I tried softball. I went to college and soon decided with my family that the times hadn't improved that much between 68 and 70, 71. So I tried again. And in 72, I made it by the skin of my teeth. And I got to be on the relay team again in Munich. And we won and set a world record just in time, ahead of what was happening in the rest of the world in terms of female athletes in Europe. And then I started coaching. I coached a summer club team as early as age 16. And after I finished college, I was trying to be a head coach back in the 70s, but women in sports then, it wasn't like it is today. So I couldn't afford it. So I also taught kindergarten. At the same time for 3 years, 2 years I did that. And that took me from the University of Tennessee to Princeton University, where I was the women's coach, and then Old Dominion University, where I was the men's and women's coach, and then back to Penn State as the men's assistant coach. I still teach swimming all the time in backyard pools right now and love it. I've got chlorine in my blood. I'm sure it's there forever, but it's really amazing to be included in this. I kind of think it's like a dream that all that happened. So to be with you all in all different sports, to talk about ways to enjoy and improve, I'm just hoping you'll ask some good questions. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Janie. And now we're going to have Brandy introduce herself as well and talk about her background in sports, but also what she does for a living and being involved in the sports industry at your level. Brandy?
Thanks, Kristen, and thank you, Chloe. And as I had told Kristen before we prepped for this, like I am so honored to have been included and to be on this panel with Janie and Violet, because I feel like my kind of foray into sports is nowhere near as exciting as both of theirs. But sports was just something I always did. I grew up in a very rural community where we were very fortunate that while we didn't have access to lots of different sports, there was lots of opportunity because it was a more rural community. And so I played sports in my youth, all growing up into high school. I wasn't talented enough, I don't think. Sometimes now I kind of look back and think maybe I could have played somewhere. But when I went off to college, I was also quite a bookworm. So studies and academics and my school was always very, very important to me. So when I went to college, I had an opportunity to work in the athletic department at the University of Nebraska as a student worker, and it was lots of fun. It was hard work, but it was lots of fun. So I was able to get my college degree and continue to work in that environment. And I primarily at that time worked in the area that for student athletes for academics. Being a student athlete, particularly at a Division I school, is a very challenging, and really I think being a student athlete at any school is a very challenging experience. But so I worked in the area where we kind of helped give those athletes a little bit of academic support to make sure that they were successful off the field, in addition to their successes on the field. And so that then kind of led into eventually my coming to work at the NCAA after going to law school. So I'm kind of really fortunate, I feel like, that I'm able to kind of blend my sport experiences and just kind of my love for the competition and the excitement with kind of the academic side of my brain and that type of thing. So as Kristen had said, and when Chloe introduced me, I work for the NCAA, so the National Collegiate Athletic Association. So that is an association made up of member colleges. A lot of the colleges that both Janie and Violet mentioned are NCAA schools. And Violet mentioned a lot of some of the NCAA conferences that she works with. And I work with those conferences too, but in a different way. So I get to work with a lot of the schools and the conferences to kind of help them understand the rules, and not necessarily the rules on the field, but the rules kind of on how they conduct their athletics programs. So coaches when they want to do recruiting or like playing season, like how much can a student athlete be practicing when they're trying to balance that with their coursework. So I get to work kind of at a very high level, but the interesting thing and the thing that I think about every day is that the things that I do are impacting individual athletes, even though I might not see that athlete each day. So I kind of get to work at like the big picture of kind of helping athletes who want to play in college.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for those introductions. And I'm very excited to get into the questions with all of you and talk through this with all of you. And I'm sure our audience members as well are excited to meet you guys and talk more with you. It's so great to have many women in this panel with different backgrounds and experiences. And that's what we want to talk to you about today. Chloe, let's start hitting our panelists with the tough questions.
Okay, so sports as an industry has previously been male dominated. So did any of you face any gender discrimination either when you were growing up, playing sports, or in your careers? Brandy, let's start with you.
Sure, thanks, Chloe. I'd be happy to. Yeah, I mean, I think kind of what you said, Chloe, right? I think there are a lot of areas within sports that are or have been very male dominated. I think I'm happy to report, I think in my experiences, I'm seeing more of a shift. I think that there are more opportunities for women. You know, I've overall been very fortunate that I think most of my experiences have been very positive. But I think with all of us, and maybe part of it is I like to kind of keep a perspective of the glass being half full instead of half empty. But I have had experiences where I'm the only woman in a room making decisions. And the irony of it is I've been in a room sometimes when we're making decisions about sports that involve only women, and it's a bunch of men in the room and me. And so that's kind of been an experience. I think another one, and again, I work kind of in a little bit different, not necessarily on the field, but kind of behind the scenes type of thing, is working at the NCAA is very challenging. It's really busy. There's lots to do. And working and having a career was something that was always really, really important to me, but I also wanted to have a family. And so when I started at the NCAA, I was married and I had a 1-year-old at the time. And I had only worked at the NCAA for about a year when I became pregnant with my second child. And at the time in my department, there were no women who had more than one child. And I had a number of people come to me after that and say, we understand if you want to go part-time or if you're going to step back, because, we've never had any woman be able to stay here and have more than one child and balance it all. Like, you can't do it all. And I remembered feeling incredibly kind of dumbstruck by that. And I wasn't okay with that. Like, that's not the option that I wanted. So I was really fortunate that I had a really good boss at the time and kind of talked to him about some of the things people were saying. And he came back and was like, what do we need to do to help you be successful? And so I think it's for having champions like that, that understand that we can have, as women, we can have really successful careers in sports or potentially in something else. And we can also have families, and we can, be daughters and sisters and mothers and do all of those things and still have a successful career. So I think those are a few of the experiences I've had, Chloe.
And Violet or Janie, did either of you face any kind of gender discrimination, or like Brandy talked about, have even a positive in work environment or positive team environment with male counterparts? Violet, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I can honestly say, I think I was kind of thrown into the threshold. I was, during my NCAA days of officiating, I was on the women's side, and refereeing on the women's side was amazing. And, receiving an opportunity to participate and get into the NBA training program to become a pro referee was a total eye opener for me. Because again, now I'm in a situation where I was on the women's side, and now I'm thrown kind of in the unknown territory of there is no women at that point in time in any sport that was officiating at any time. And, having walking into a room, I've experienced walking into a room and you're being the only female. I've experienced being at camp and you're the only female. I've experienced, walking into an arena and now you hear all the whispers. Oh my God, the woman is here. Can we talk to her? Can we yell at her? Can we touch her? Just all those different aspects of the unknown. And I can honestly say, you know what, it was a little scary at the beginning for me. But I think the one part, and I think in learning my personality and just knowing myself, just having that intestinal fortitude and knowing that I had done the work, I knew that I was qualified. I knew that I had the work ethic. I knew that, regardless of how the public felt, because we had all this media attention that we had to kind of maneuver through when I first started. But I think the one thing that, of course, for myself, that helped me through all of this was that I knew that I had earned my keep and that I had deserved and was deserving of an opportunity, just like any male referee in the country. And I commend the NBA for allowing me to receive that opportunity. But I have experienced, men asking me, why didn't you just stay on the women's side? I go, because I was given an opportunity to referee on this side. And with that opportunity, I'm going to kick the door wide open. I'm going to jump at it. And again, having a 20-year career in the NBA, I think I can honestly say that I was pretty successful. But you know what? I think for all of us women, we're always strong, we're always determined, and we're always just wanting our opportunity. Just let the playing field remain even. And I can honestly say that when I started, there wasn't a lot of women role models. There wasn't a lot of women in sports. And now when you look at sports, we're everywhere. We're in the front office, we're coaches, we're referees, we're, we run facilities, we do everything. So, you know what, I'm just grateful for the opportunity that I was given, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Janie, I think I might have cut you off. Did you also want to add to that about gender discrimination?
I just have a few quick things. As an athlete, all the athletes that are listening will probably be shocked, but as a swimmer in the 60s, we were discriminated against if we were muscular. It was kind of difficult. Like male counterparts would say, well, I wouldn't take her out. Look, she'd probably have a fight or something. I lived through that in high school. I also lived through not winning sometimes, where I'd have people, not just males, but females say, what happened to you? You only got a third at the nationals. So that was a different kind of discrimination. When I wanted to keep going with swimming, we didn't have a pool in our high school. So we never practiced. We just went to Penn State to the state championships without having our own pool. We'd go to different places. Then I wanted to go to college after 68 and get a scholarship. There were no scholarships. There were none. So I chose to go to a school where education always came first before you ask any questions. That always came first. And the school where I went, they had a pool, but it was empty. And girls sunbathed in the pool. There was no water in it. So I chose to go back and try again. And I was fortunate to be able to go to Wake Forest University and swim on the men's team with Coach Leo Ellison, bless his soul. But that's not all. I went to coach at the University of Tennessee. The women's team, I got paid $400, $800, and $1,500 in the 3 years that I was there. But that was a long time ago, before lots of you were born. But we weren't allowed to use the phone on the pool deck. It was only for the men coaches, the men's team. The women were not allowed to use it. And we used bathing suits that we used 2 years in a row because they didn't want to give the money, the budget for us to have the fancy suits every year. So that's just a little bit. I loved it. It sure is different today due to Title IX. One of my best friends went to Washington with others and fought for women in sports for coaching positions. And it's so much better than it was when I first started in coaching, but it's still difficult for women trying to manage, just like Brandy was saying, trying to manage your outside life and coaching and recruiting all year round. You can do it, but it's really hard. Yeah.
And I think Janie, some of the stuff you were mentioning, you can actually talk about a little bit in our next question as well, when you were talking about being muscular and the type of swimsuits the women were required to wear versus men. So aside from discrimination, women are oftentimes expected to look, act, or dress a certain way.
What are some gender norms that you have to break through in the workplace? Janie, go ahead and kick this off.
Well, coaching, it wasn't so much that. It was more, can I go back to that, Kristen, about the bathing suits?
Yeah, sure.
So the guys wore bathing suits made out of nylon and they were fine, but the girls wore bathing suits that were like had a skirt in front, Chloe. Now it wasn't a separate skirt, but it was I'm so sorry, I don't have mine with me. I thought I did. But we looked, I mean, it looks like we were wearing drag suits or suits or like pantyhose almost compared to what the guys wore pantyhose, but we had those long skirt things. And I keep saying, what would we have done if we'd had the suits that now they have? But I was just glad to have that long suit, actually. So no discrimination in terms of uniforms with coaching. That's a pretty balanced situation. Maybe in other sports, though.
And Brandy, I know we wanted to talk with you more about some different gender norms in the workplace for you as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes as women, particularly kind of in an office environment and things like that, sometimes we tend to be a little more passive. We tend to kind of let others dominate in discussions and conversations. And that's something throughout my career that I've always tried to be kind of very aware of, is the language choices I'm using. I had shared with Kristen last week, a story of apologizing when I didn't need to apologize, like saying the words "I'm sorry" when I really didn't need to say I was sorry. And it always struck me as, because I do feel like a lot of my male counterparts would have never. So an example, right? I ask somebody to have a document or something to me by a certain date. There's a deadline, right? It's kind of like when an assignment is due or you have homework due, right? And when they weren't turning it in, I'm writing them in an email saying, "I'm sorry to bother you, but this deadline." And it's something that I've had to like work on, of like, kind of reprogramming myself, because, well, first, I'm really not actually sorry to be happy to follow up with them. And then two, my choice of language, I think, was giving me a more passive kind of demeanor. And right, it's still, you want to be polite. You're in a work professional setting, so you need to be that. But it's okay to sometimes be assertive, right? It's okay to sometimes just say what you need, say what you want. rather than kind of tiptoeing arounding it or waiting for someone to ask you about it. And I do think as women sometimes, and again, I don't want to generalize it across the board, but I do think that there sometimes are, we sometimes do tend to be a little bit more passive. And maybe less direct, or sometimes when we are being direct, we might be called not nice names and things like that, right? And not to let that get you down, but like those are things that we have to kind of acknowledge that we're doing. And it's not that you necessarily need to swing it all the way, but like kind of try to find a happy medium in there. And so that's just something that I've worked on over the years. And I hope to not offend any of the men on this call, but sometimes I have to stop and ask myself, okay, would this male colleague, would he have done it that way? Would he be apologizing for following up with somebody who didn't do their job? No, he probably wouldn't be apologizing. So why am I apologizing? So I do think that that's something just as women be kind of cognizant and aware of. And, and the nice thing is I've worked with other females in my office too, right? On that as well too. And I've said, if you see me do this, like, I need you to like pull me aside and say like, hey, why are you doing that? Like, you have every right to ask for that. And I'll do the same for you too. So those are some of the experiences and kind of some of the ways I've worked around it.
And Violet, I'm not sure if you've had to break through any gender norms when you were the first female referee.
No,
I'm not sure if there was any
God.
gender norms yet
No.
established.
Well, you know what, Kristen, I'll tell you, I've had quite a few. I can honestly tell you, you know what, when I got hired in the NBA, they literally would, every single game that I would have, they would actually send an email to each arena to let them know that they had to have a separate locker room for me, or D at the time, because no arena had a male and a female locker room. They only had the male locker room. So I think that the one thing that has changed over the years now is that they, every time they build a new arena or they remodel the arena, they now have 2 locker rooms for the women that are now on staff. So I feel like, yay, kudos to me. I accomplished something in my 20-year career. I think the other thing that was very, very obvious is that I say this to women all the time, that I would literally have to wear men's pants, have to take them to a tailor and get them tailored to fit myself. A men's referee shirt, I had to get that tailored. I think the only thing that was kind of neutral was our black shoes, because you could choose, as long as you chose the particular sponsor that the NBA had, you could choose whichever shoes you wanted. But literally, I would have to find a really, really good tailor to kind of chop up my pants and my shirt to obviously make it fit my body, that I would actually look good in my uniform. And I think even now, I'm actually proud to say that there are distributors that now make a women's referee pant. Now they have women cut shirts for women, which I'm very proud of. And even this year, we created a new official jacket, even in the NCAA, Brandy, which is really nice. I was on that committee, and we now have a men's version of the jacket and a female version of the jacket. So I think through the years of just being a part and being one of the first, you kind of have all those bumps that you kind of have to navigate through. But in today's officiating, women, we can now buy our uniform, and you can choose to obviously choose a pant that is more curvy for us, and the shirt and the jacket. So I'm very, very proud of that accomplishment, because believe me, my tailor would not want to see me coming every single year.
Thank you so much, guys. So we're going to move on to the next topic, which has to deal with some of the accomplishments as well for women that you've already shared with us. So we really appreciate you sharing those wonderful stories with us, those personal stories. Chloe, can you bring us to the next topic?
Of course, Kristen. All some of you have been the first female to accomplish something in the sports world. I am sure many of you have been the only female in the room or at the table. What is the experience you like, and how do you open the door for more women to come into sports? Violet, can you lead us off?
Sure. I think the first thing for me, I was really in an unknown territory. It was one of those situations where, the NBA, it was the good old boys club. And I say good old boys, meaning good old boys as far as the coaches, as far as players, and as far as officials. So, bringing a woman into the forefront was, and I guess I can say it meant change. And we already know how, for a lot of people, change is difficult. And, but unfortunately for them, here I was, I received an opportunity and I was going to go head on. And I think the one positive thing for me is that I said to myself, I said, a referee, you're either 50% right or 50% wrong. Regardless if you're 100% right, because that's just the nature of what I do. And I just said to myself that I was just going to be myself. I was not going to try to become someone different. I said for the guys that I work with, the ones that liked me, they liked me from the beginning of just meeting me or getting to know me. And the ones who didn't, I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong other than being a presence that they were not used to. So I made it my point to be very accommodating. And I guess, I don't know if that's a good word or a bad word, but I did, in my opinion, I think I did a really, really good job of allowing them just to get to know me. Making it a point to make them comfortable. Like I said to a whole group of my colleagues, and I said, look, you guys can yell, you can scream, you don't have to change anything. I am good. I understand where we are and what I'm doing. I just want you guys to get to know me and understand that I am a true professional, that I'm going to work extremely hard to do my job to the best of my ability. And I've been given an opportunity and I'm not going anywhere, and I know that they thought for a minute that, probably D and I would eventually go, we don't want to do this because it's too complicated. But I literally said to myself, that was nowhere near a possibility for me. I just felt like this is an opportunity that I had to take advantage of. And I had to show them that, what, I was not one and done. And I'm so proud to say right to this day that the NBA now has 4 full-time women that are part of the NBA program. And I think they have about 30 women between the NBA and in their G League, which is their minor league program. So I just say that, what, my success really helped with them allowing more women to be a part of the program. And I'm so, so proud of that.
Thank you for that. And Brandy, I know you've talked about being the only female in the room or at the table. What has that been like, and how do you help other women get up to your level that, we talked about on the phone with you, how, you were the first woman in some of these positions or the first mother in some of these positions. So how do you help other women realize what they can achieve?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was thinking as Violet was talking to and Chloe's question about like, how do we get more women into these opportunities and into sports? And I mean, I'm a firm believer that it starts with women, right? If we are not doing everything we can to lift up those women around us, then, that's something that, is very important to me. And so I've been fortunate enough that, as I started my career, that there were other women who kind of helped look out for me, who helped kind of coach me up when I needed it, reminded me of what I'm capable of. And I'm incredibly blessed in that, having had that experience. And so for me, I know that a big reason I am where I am is because of those experiences. And I owe a lot to those women. And so my way of giving back to those women is to do it for other women, right? So I am constantly mentoring, helping. I kind of call it like building the bench, right? Building the bench of other women, you finding my successors, finding other people who can kind of step up, helping to identify opportunities for the women in my office. So it's going to take more than just women. I don't know that we can do it alone, but I feel like it starts there. It starts with women lifting up other women, and there's enough opportunities for all of us. There is, we need to be, a lot of the sports, right? One of the foundation things of sports is competition, right? I think a lot of us are in sports because we like to win, right? We like to earn those medals. That's part of why we do it. But there's also, in so much of sport, right, that team aspect of it, and what can we do to help lift up others so that way they can win too. Because I promise you, there's enough opportunities for us all to win.
Well said. Well said. Janie, we're actually going to have you answer the next question. We're seeing some questions come in the Q&A box. We want to make sure we have enough time for all of our prepared questions and the ones that are coming in now. Women who are entering the sports industry now, really, after talking with you guys, might not have that same experience of being the only female in the room, which is wonderful. And partly because of all the work you all have done.
Do you feel like there has been a shift in the sports world to welcome and accept more women into the fold? Janie, let's start with you.
I mentioned Title IX that came along in the late 60s, early 70s, and that enabled a lot of women retiring from swimming, at least, to think about going on and being coaches. So the universities started hiring more women to coach women's teams and even to coach men's teams. That's basically what's happened over the years. And I'm really feel lucky that I was in on the beginning of that, because I might not have gotten hired at the University of Tennessee or at Princeton or Old Dominion or Penn State. So there's many more opportunities, but still there's women that are wishing there were more. I'm not sure there's equal. Some men's sports actually were discontinued and coaches were released of their jobs to balance it as a result of Title IX. I talked to Kristen about that a little bit, which is unfortunate. I mean, to tell you the truth, it stemmed from the number of athletes in football, male athletes in football. So Title IX helped balance that and try to make equal numbers for the teams, whether it was male or female. Now I would say it's pretty even in terms of the number of sports. Well, Penn State has so many different sports open to women. So there's opportunity galore. Women just have to not give up. Kind of like what Brandy was saying. You know, if you want something, you might start a little lower. Violet was saying she started at college refereeing. She kept going. And everyone out there that's listening, if you want to move up in your career or even in your sport, you have to keep progressing and never give up. Just keep going. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Janie. It's great to see that you all feel the future is very bright for women in sports.
Women have become a large part of the sports industry and are earning prominent roles and jobs. Can you discuss the importance of female representation in sports and in leadership roles? Violet, let's hear from you first.
Well, you know what? I think that's a great question. I think, it's extremely important because, and I remember when I started, we didn't have any of those role models. And I think now it is so important for women or for young little girls to now be able to watch any type of sport on TV, and they see women as officials in the NBA. They see women coaches in the NBA. They see now women are in the front office. We had Sarah Thomas. She just refereed the Super Bowl, which was amazing.
Mm,
So, just to have that opportunity as a young girl, I don't, and it doesn't matter what sport you watch, you always have a woman that's a commentator, and I remember when I first started in the NBA, my first probably 5 or 6 years, there was only one female commentator, and that was Cheryl Miller, and she was commentating on TNT. And now you look at, it doesn't matter what network, it doesn't matter what sport, there is always a woman's presence. And I think that just tells the story. I think that tells the story of how we've grown. I think Jamie has said it. I think Brandy has said it. And it just, it's just time. And I think for all of us, each one of us have been examples. And we've persevered, and we've done it in so many different ways, which is phenomenal, because it shows little girls that we're not like in a little box. You're able to do whatever you want, and it doesn't matter what sport, it doesn't matter what career, it doesn't matter. But it's important for us, and we've always been, and we will continue to be those examples for those young girls that are watching, that now they can see that they will have opportunities. And if you want to do it, now we didn't say it was going to be easy. You have to work for it, and you have to persevere, and you have to be good at whatever you're trying to do. But at least now for all the young girls, they will have an opportunity. And I think that's the amazing thing of what all of us have done.
And we all know on the call today, our audience, our panelists, that representation is important for everyone. Our athletes, whether they're male or female, can definitely relate to this women in sports topic in terms of wanting to see people like them in successful roles. Chloe, back to you.
Okay, so what advice do you have for female athletes or coaches on how they can navigate this industry? And what advice do you have for male athletes and coaches on how they can be good allies for their female partners? Jeannie, you can go first.
okay. So as far as, let's talk a little bit about the athletes, because I imagine a lot of athletes are listening. And the way the athletes can help each other is by, we talked about this, making sure that you compliment someone that's swimming next to you or running next to you, that was a really good effort. And Chloe asked me in the beginning, what do you do to get people to go to practice? Challenging when it's remote. We haven't talked about that. I was thinking about it earlier. Everyone has to make their practice the best they can and walk away with something every day, no matter how bad you feel, no matter what's happened at home or school, you have to have something. My dad used to say, you can always find something positive. As far as women coaches, I'm a little prejudiced if they're coaching women, because they usually have an insight, maybe a bit more than a male coach would in terms of understanding. Excuse me. And if a woman coach has not ever competed in the sport, they're probably more challenged just because they may not know what it feels like to swim a 110, 100 freestyle or swim a long distance race, but they're probably getting used to it by learning from the athletes. You always learn from the athletes. The question about the male coaches coaching men and women, it's hard to coach them the same. There are not very many people in coaching swimming at the university level that do both. It's really challenging, but a way to help that is to talk to other coaches, not just stay within your own team. But we talked about that a little bit, Kristen, where you get a collaboration going. What's wrong with sharing? You're all trying to help the athletes improve. And sometimes talking to another coach, you get reassurance, plus you get ideas. You're still learning. Aren't we always learning, whether you're an athlete or a coach? So I think that's my message to the coaches. Hang in there. You too, try to find something positive for each of the athletes if you can. Know them by name. Talk about not just what they're doing in the sport, but their home life. That's something that I love doing as a coach, is trying to talk to every daggone athlete. That's a funny word, I know, that was out there competing in a practice at least once, and not necessarily tell them what they're doing right or wrong, but just be a good listener. So that's pretty much my advice. I think male coaches do the best they can, but maybe are at a slight disadvantage when they're coaching women. That's it.
Violet, do you have anything to add, not necessarily for coaching, but just being for males to be better allies for female partners, especially for your position as a referee?
Well, I just think it's extremely important. I think we're doing a better job, and I agree with Jamie. I think the education component of it is so important. I think, when you're a coach, you're a mentor, you're a teacher, and you have to understand, and be diverse in what group you're actually dealing with. And I think I agree with Jamie so much when she said, you kind of use your allies, and just understand that, for even if a male is trying to, coach females, I think there are some really, really good male coaches out there. There's no question about it. But I think they do have to, they have to share. They have to be able to understand that the way that they talk to the men, they can't talk to the women, or, just being understanding, because what women go through and what men go through are totally different. And I think as long as they educate themselves and they understand that, then they can navigate through that. They can be successful. There's no question. But will I honestly say that, am I biased? Or would I prefer to have a woman coach? I probably would, because I think that they just have a better understanding of where my needs are or what we need. But I do think that there's some very, very good and excellent men coaches out there. I do. There's no question about it.
Well, thank you so much, Brandy, Jamie, and Violet. It was great to learn all about your personal stories. We can see how you have all shattered glass ceilings and truly opened many doors for women in the sports world.
At this time, we would now like to allow all questions for our panelists. You can submit those questions through the Q&A box, and Kristen will read them aloud on the webinar.
Great. Thank you, Chloe. One of the first questions that came in actually was for you, Brandy. The question is, once women reach leadership roles, how important is it for them to support other women?
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, I think it's critical. I think it is fundamentally the first step. I mean, I think if women aren't trying to help women, then I just throw my hands up. I'm not sure what else we can do. Right, that's the first step. And then I do think after women are helping women, it does take males, it takes other individuals to help lift each other up and open those things up. On the last question, I was thinking when folks were talking, I mean, I loved Janie and Violet's answers, because I do think that's it, right? It's knowing the individual, it's knowing that person. And as a leader, that's something that you can do, right? You can get to know that individual as a coach, get to know that person, understand what kind of drives and motivates that person, and that's going to be the best way. But fundamentally, I think, yes, it has to start with women. We have to take responsibility for lifting each other up.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. I'm looking for another question here. I think this one's for Violet. Violet, what's the best part and the hardest part for working in the NBA or in the NCAA? The best part and the hardest part of working as a referee.
Wow, I think I'll go with the hardest first, and then I'll have the best last. I think the hardest part of being an NBA referee is the travel. You know, for 6 months, you are on the road. I think I was on the road about 22 to 25 days a month for 6 months. You're kind of living out of your suitcase. You're at the mercy. You know, your itinerary is the NBA's for 6 months, and I think, you know, it was very, very tough. You know, and again, you know, players and coaches, they fly private and we're flying commercial, so you have to deal with all the travel issues. You have to navigate through that. You got to, you know, you got to eat right. You know, it's difficult to eat right when you're on the road, so you're kind of navigating through all those things. But I can honestly say that the positive, one of the best things is I've had the opportunity to referee some of the best athletes in the entire world. And I think with that, it was just invigorating. It was exciting. It's, you know, to be in an arena, 20,000 people, night in and night out, the best athletes in the world. I refereed the late Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade. There is not a player throughout my 20-year career, just having the opportunity to actually be on the court and watching them. They're so talented, they're quick, they're fast, and I will let all the ladies know they are huge. Which was so invigorating and exciting. So, you know what? For me, I've had such an amazing career in so many different ways, and just having the opportunity, I just truly been blessed and very, very thankful for it.
Thank you, thank you. One in here for Janie. Janie, do you remember when you started seeing female swimming officials? And where are your medals?
Well, I'm pretty sure in the state championships in high school, I hate to tell you what the date was. My senior year of high school, late 60s, there was a woman on the deck as a stroke and turn judge or something. And in my college years, there definitely were women. That Title IX might have opened it up to more referees. I'm not sure. Violet, you might know that, but there were more women timing at swim meets when I was in college. And so you asked about my medal. So I have it right here. I'm not sure how it'll show.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
this is it. This is from 72. Each Olympics is different in terms of how they make their medals. So 68 is here, real quick. I don't want to steal the time from people. So these are from 68. So the gold actually is the one that looks like this.
Wow.
Can you see it all right?
Yep.
And this is the bronze. The reason is I take them places where I want people to touch them. So I went to Hershey to the Miracle Children's Network, and it's going to make me get emotional. Gave them to the parents whose children were fighting for their lives. I don't care that they touched it. I think they were touching it for good luck. But this one has got a special coating on it. So it's not going to change colors. Lots of people put this around their neck. Chloe, when I see you in Lancaster, I'll bring it so you can have it around your neck.
Yes, please do.
But like I said, I can't really believe this is mine. And for all the women that are out there listening, on the back, I have to say, there's 2 naked men. And don't worry, it's, you know, this is the way the male looks. But the reason is because the first Olympics in Greece, there were no women. there were no women, so the men didn't need to wear a costume or an outfit. I'm proud to say that I don't have the statistics, but now women win as many or more gold, silver, and bronze medals in the Olympics. I don't know about the Winter Olympics. But anyway, that's that. Here's a picture. I guess that is me with big shoulders. So we got first, second, and third in that event. So that's all 3 Americans. So the flag was behind us on the podium. You can see I have pretty broad shoulders there. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, but now it's really cool. So it's cool. You can be muscular and love it. So that's, I think, did I answer the question? I got a little off tangent.
Yeah, you did. I think the most important part there was they wanted to see the medals, and you brought
And the
you
front
brought the
versus the
medals.
back. Okay.
Very good, very good. We do have another question here for Violet. Violet, one of our coworkers here talks about how he worked with Sandy Ortiz Del Valle at the U.S. Basketball League, who became the first female referee in a men's professional league. Can you please share the importance of contribution of women like Sandy in advancing the cause of women in sports?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I can honestly say that I have to thank Sandy because without her, I may not have been given my opportunity. And I think that's something that we've talked about earlier is that, you know what, the more we are put in the forefront and the more our presence is known, and now that you know, for young girls, looking at women in all sports and all profession, and it doesn't matter whether it's sport, whether it's doctors, lawyers, firefighters, police officers, there's women. And I think that's what we need. And I think the more women that do well, and which we always do, I think that's the one key component that once we are given an opportunity, we become very, very successful. And I think the more successful we become and we're put out in the forefront, I think it will continue. But I have to have hands off to Sandy because she was one of the first to actually just go out and referee, you know, men for the Pro-Am leagues. And without her, I probably would have not been given my opportunity.
All right, great. All right, so I think we're going to try and wrap up a couple more questions here. Chloe, a question actually came in for you, so we're going to pass it off to you now. There is someone named Jeanette who is an an athlete swimmer from Area P, and she just got started being a health and fitness coordinator. And she would like to ask you, first, what is the most important thing she should remember to be a health coordinator? Is there any advice you can give her about being a health and fitness coordinator?
Yes, I do have tons, but I'm going to be minimal with this. As a health and fitness coordinator, you do need to take a course with athlete leadership. And I know we have someone on this call that is named Chelsea Hamill. She helps with athlete leadership, and I am a graduate from ALU, from Athlete Leadership University, and health and fitness is really fun. It talks about the importance of health and also importance of fitness, because it can balance out all the science from health and fitness together. You know, it definitely help in every single sport.
And Chloe, I know that you stay active. That's another good thing is staying active and telling your other athletes to stay active, right?
Yes,
helping
but
be a role model.
sometimes other athletes doesn't understand the importance of health and fit. But I've been trying to remind them to stay fit and go with it.
Very, very nice. She also wanted to know if you have any favorite memories from swimming. Do you have any favorite swimming memories? You probably have a ton. Can you think of one? Can you narrow it down?
Memories of swimming. So My very first medals is in a showcase outside of my room, but I'm not going to show them because they're outside of my room.
Right.
But overall, the total medals that I have is 107.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That's a lot of medals, Chloe.
Wow.
Yeah.
We can see them behind you. We can see all the red
Yep.
the red
So
ribbons
there's
there.
2 rows of powerlifting and 2 rows of swimming.
Nice.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you, Chloe.
Yep.
We have one more question to wrap up, and we'd like to ask each of the panelists to answer this. So Janie, Violet, and Brandy, one of the questions that came in was, what was the most challenging confrontation you had, and how did you handle it, or what was the results? When you think about being a women in the sports industry, sports world, the most challenging confrontation, it could be something that happened a long time ago or something more recently, but most challenging confrontation, and how did you handle that? Can we start with Brandy?
Sure. Wow. I was trying to think of an example, but so I don't have necessarily a good example of, I guess, the most challenging. And honestly, probably some of my examples I can't share because I'd have to reveal the school or something like that who's involved. So I'm going to just answer it more of like, when I have those confrontational kind of situations, and I think I saw one of the questions in there too is about like, how do you have courage to have, hard conversations with people? I would say my number one advice is practice. That sounds probably kind of funny, right? But when you have to have a confrontational or you disagree with someone, or you're going to have kind of a difficult conversation, practice it in your room, practice it in front of a mirror, practice what you're going to say, and be thoughtful in your words. And so whenever I've had to have difficult, and I've had to give some really hard decisions. I've had to give decisions saying that a student athlete wasn't going to get to play in a game, or even worse yet, they're not going to get to play in a college game ever again. Those are very heartbreaking. It really hurts my heart inside when I have to give those answers. And it'd be nice to be able to say that I can say yes to everyone, because trust me, it's always easier to say yes, right? But sometimes there's certain situations where there's rules, and for whatever reason, it's just not something they're gonna be able to do. And so I practice. I write out kind of my notes of like what the reasons are, what my rationale is, and kind of support that. And then I practice. I'll practice in the shower. I'll practice in front of the mirror of how I'm going to deliver it. And you'd be amazed that sometimes just saying it out loud before you actually say it to the person helps you kind of feel more confident when you do have to say it to the person. And it also kind of helps you maybe like, change some of what you're going to say if once you hear it out loud, it maybe doesn't sound quite the right way that you want it to. So not an exact example that I can give you, but those are kind of some of the skills that I use when I do have to do those.
Well, we all know that practice makes perfect. Our athletes know practice. They definitely know that. Janie, can you, I see Chloe laughing. Janie, can you give an example of a really challenging confrontation, or if you can't give a specific example, advice you'd give our audience today if they come across something like that?
Brandy, that was excellent what you said. Before I go any further, yes, I can remember being intimidated by the male coach at the University of Tennessee. And I thought about taking an assertiveness training course, because I was really letting him not let me speak, but he wasn't listening to me. And I think the idea of practicing is one thing, but I always write things down. I write things down and go over it and over. And I almost always turn to a friend and have them be the listener with me, talking about what I'm going to have to talk to with someone that doesn't agree with me. But I'm still learning, all of you. I'm still learning that whole thing. I think it's a weakness. I don't want to say I'm weak, but I have to learn to stand up even more than I do sometimes with people that don't like what I say. and not let them make me small, because you can do that. But if you practice it, like Brandy's saying, and you've written the notes down, you'll know what to say. And again, you talk to another coach or another athlete, they'll be a good listening board. And they're most likely going to say, that was really good, mostly. So that's, yeah, I won't say the man's name, but boy, I wish I could do that over again at Tennessee.
Well, thank you, Janie. And I think it's really humbling to hear from you guys. You know, we're looking up to you in this webinar and everything that you've done, and to say that, you know, I'm still working on stuff like that, and I still have to take the time to practice and take the time to gather my thoughts. I think that's good for everyone to hear, that we're not perfect yet, and we can always strive to be better, confident, more stronger women. Violet, let's end with you. Do you have any specific examples of a challenging confrontation, or like these other women, example of what you would do in that situation?
Wow, do I? But you know what? I have to say, Jamie and Brandy, you guys were dead on. I mean, I totally agree. It's you definitely have to practice it. You have to say it out loud. I think for me, I've experienced, I think it was after my 10th year in the NBA, when I actually had started really advancing, and there was all this chatter that I was going to make the playoffs, and which was like an unknown in the NBA, because literally not only did they not think that I would last for 10 years, they really didn't think that I would make the playoffs, because if you make the playoffs in the NBA as a referee, you have really made it. And I never forget when I got that call for that year to get into the playoffs, and when my boss, literally, I saw him, and he actually looked me in my face and he said, you know, he said, you know, you really have earned your keep, and you've earned, you know, to get in the playoffs. He says, but you know, we really didn't think you were going to make it. And I said, well, you know what? Shame on you.
Yeah.
Because you gave me an opportunity and I was not going anywhere. And I would say to our young women that are watching this, is that comment that Brandy made about practice, that you actually have to work hard. You have the work ethic. You have to be passionate. You have to dream. You have to have all those things to persevere through all those negative things that are thrown at you, because they're gonna come. Because for us, we're always kind of in the unknown, depending upon what field we're in. And a lot of times when you're the first at something, or when you're going into a field where there's no women, of course you're going to get all these negative things that come at you. But you stay the course and you work hard, you have the work ethic, you have the confidence, and you have the perseverance. And with all those things, you will be successful. There's no question about it.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all three of you. That was all great words of wisdom, words of the wise. Thank you to the wonderful questions that everyone has submitted. We're going to wrap this up. Thank you, Brandy and Janie and Violet, for inspiring us with your stories, your journeys, and all the advice tonight. Chloe, let's wrap up this webinar.
Okay, Kristen. So this concludes our Team Tuesdays webinar. Our next webinar will be on Tuesday, April 20th at 7 p.m. It will feature a special presentation to showcase our amazing volunteers and thank them for all the incredible work they do for our athletes and Special Olympics Pennsylvania.
Thank you to everyone tonight for joining this webinar. We hope you enjoyed our guest speakers, and a special thank you to Chloe for helping us lead this webinar tonight.
We will all see you again next month. And until then, stay healthy, stay safe, and be fit.